Hi, welcome to Chapter 38.1, Origins of WWII. This is a review for Bentley and Traditions for Morales' class. So, goals, understand the factors that led to World War II. Listen to factors, not the start. Everyone knows the start, but the factors, why it happened. And understand why Germany, Italy, and Japan sought to expand their territories, which is essentially the factors that led to World War II, excuse me. World War II, Allies versus Axis powers is general overview. Italy, Germany, Japan equals Axis, Allies, Great Britain, France, USSR, and USA. Put France with a question mark because they're there for a little while, they get beat up, and then they kind of like the France in exile thing. Revisionists, and you see them, these are people who want to revise what happened at the end of World War I with the peace treaties, which essentially the people who got messed up by the peace treaties, okay, they don't like them, so they want to change them. So they're referred to as revisionists. They want to revise the rules or the end of those results. In particular, guess who? Germany. Okay. Allies initially followed a policy of appeasement given into them because of the traumatic situation in World War I. It was costly, and it was a terrible situation for most groups. And they go, "Wow, we don't want it. We don't want that to happen." So they appeased early on. Well, that was a problem because they kept on giving in, and then pretty soon, when the group that wants something doesn't get what they want, they go and do more than crying. War erupts in 1939. Okay. Global by 1941 once the U.S. gets involved, and it's over by 1945. But it really started way before that with the Japanese invasion of China, and we'll get to that right now. So Japan's war in China, discussed in picture on the right-hand side. I'll highlight that in a moment. But they move into Manchuria, and mainly because they need more access to resources. Okay, Japan became industrialized real quick. Remember, at the end of the 1800s, okay, and into the early 1900s, or it became a very industrialized nation. They need a couple things: coal, iron, and steel. All right, coal, iron, and oil, for their industry. They can't get that anymore, so they need to go and find some more stuff. Because of the Great Depression, because their economy goes down the tank, they need to go and expand and get these things that they need for their industry. Well, the full-scale invasion takes place by 1937, and they have a big chunk of China called Manchuria, which they essentially take over. In 1937, they move into China proper, and they start to do some terrible things. The rape of Nanjing, same thing, depending on who's translating, just shows the sickness that's going to be involved in this war, World War II, more so than any other war. The brutality, the dehumanization, all the terrible stuff that's associated with World War II. Here it comes. So in the rape of Nanking, this is an understatement, but there's quite a few discrepancies in facts and information, mainly upheld by the Japanese because they don't want to look too terrible, but this is atrocious what they did. So they bombed the place, the urban center, Nanking being one of the most populous cities in the world, not just in China, but in the world. They bomb it knowing that it's purely a civilian place, although it has some military things on the outskirts and on the edge. Okay, their intent was just to destroy and crush them so that there would be little resistance. They kill hundreds and thousands of Chinese. This is a lowball estimate. Your book is very lowball on this one, of Chinese people, and they kill them in an atrocious way. So here's a Chinese officer, and if you look in the background, he's being encouraged by his fellow officers and other groups to try to chop this guy's head off in one stroke. This is the level of sickness that's going to be involved, and so they would play this game of, let's see who'd be the first one to chop it off in one stroke. And unlike your movies and stuff where it does happen with one stroke, it doesn't really happen very often in reality. So this is a disgusting, terrible scene. The rape of some 7,000 women, that's just a small number. I mean, other sites will tell you, other information sources will tell you the number's kind of closer into the 50,000 rape, and then a lot of times the women would be murdered soon after be forcibly raped by a gang of Japanese soldiers. If you want to see more, see Unit 731, not 737, 731. I don't know why I got that now. It must be a plane. Okay, but there's some of the more disgusting things that were involved in this element. So Japan signs a tripartite pact with Germany, Italy, and then they also later on signed a non-aggression pact in 1941, once the war, just before they bombed Pearl Harbor, because they don't want to get involved in a war against the USSR while they're fighting the U.S. So this is a setup to the war. Chinese resistance. People always go, well, what does China do? And China was in chaos. Okay, China is still fighting a battle over the previous revolution to get rid of the emperor, the installation of the nationalist forces, the nationalist forces fighting the CCP, and these two groups actually get together, even though that the nationalists, remember, attacked the CCP. Okay, and surprise attack them to try to get rid of them. Well, now they're together again to try to deal with the Japanese, because now it's a full-scale invasion of China by the Japanese. For the most part, they're ineffective, mainly because they're poorly organized, and the two sides don't trust each other. Although they're trying to work together, they don't completely trust each other, and so that causes problems. The guerrilla warfare that they do carry out helps to tie down the Japanese army. And this is a huge, huge monumental thing, because about half of the Japanese army was kept in China, so they couldn't be other places to defend and protect their empire, which made it easier for other groups, in particular the U.S., to go into places. The clash between the communists and nationalists erupt every now and then. Although they're fighting the Japanese, they would sometimes brawl with each other. And also, this is an important stage for the communists, the CCP, because it's during this time that they go and get the support of the people by treating the peasants nicely, as opposed to the Kuomintang, the nationalists, who would take things by force for the army and say, we need that food for our army. The CCP would do it in a much nicer way and say, hey, we're fighting the Japanese, we need some of the food, anything you can spare. And so they gained a lot of respect from the local people. This is going to pay off for them and set up their victory in 1949 that we'll talk about in 2 more chapters. The Italian aggression. The Italians are mad about World War I. First of all, they were on the other side in World War I at the beginning, then they switched over to the Allies in the middle of the war, and they were hoping that they'd get some territories and some lands from the German and / Austrian Empire. So that causes some problems. They didn't get land, they didn't get credit, and they kind of disrespected, and so they leave kind of pouty and stuff. Okay. The depression kicks into Italy, and it kicks their butts. They put in Mussolini because he promises to avenge their losses and to make Italy strong, another Roman Empire. And so to prove it, they invade Ethiopia, which is one of the last independent places up until now, and then they go in with a full force. 275,000 Ethiopians are going to be killed, and only 2,000 Italian troops killed. So it's more than just, beating them up. It's beating them up and teaching them a lesson to kind of show Italian power. Later on, they also take Libya and Albania, and this is the expansion of their territories. They need to go and expand the territories to get some access to resources that they might need for their industry, and to kind of make Italy feel proud and bold so that they can rebuild themselves during the Great Depression. Germany, this is where everything else gets started. Hitler is elected, and we talked about this before in a previous chapter, on the merits that he's going to disregard the Versailles Treaty because he thinks that's what the damage is. The Versailles Treaty is what's stopping Germany from being great, and it's put Germany in such a terrible situation, and he's quite accurate in that saying. So he says, we're not going to be part of the League of Nations, and I'm going to rebuild a military, and he does this even though it's against the Versailles Treaty. He's not allowed to do it, but no one stops him. So once again, this is kind of like the boy and a girl on a date. The boy puts his hand on the girl's shoulder. Okay, well, if she doesn't stop him, yeah, you know what's happening next. Okay, the next step is they're going to Anschluss. Yeah, that's right, the Anschluss, okay, which is not that, it's the union with Austria, which is completely against the Versailles Treaty. They're not supposed to hook up with Austria. They're not supposed to be friends, because last time Austria and Germany got together, World War I. So now World War II. No one stops them. Guess where they're going now? They're going to that Sudetenland. That's right. They're going to Sudetenland. He claims that there's some German people being mistreated, which is partially true, partially not true, but it doesn't matter. He just needs an excuse to go in there. He goes in there and says he's freeing these German citizens who live in Czechoslovakia, and therefore it's his right to do that. Well, finally, the Europeans get involved, and it's the British and the French that get involved. We'll get to that in a second. This probably should be the next slide. The Spanish Civil War, this is going to be a kind of trial run for the new weapons that they've been developing, in particular the Germans and the Italians. This lasts in 1936 to 1939. There's not much of in it, but because I like this picture so much, this is Guernica by Picasso. There's two groups, the Republicans, who are loyal to the elected government, which is socialist, okay, and the Nationalists, which is a military-led government, or a military group led by this guy named Francisco Franco, who is a fascist. Well, fascists like to hang out, so Hitler and Mussolini help him out, okay? And then they're going to supply him with weapons and training and support for this military, and also they're going to test their weapons. So this is Guernica, is this town that the Germans blow up with their blitzkrieg, their planes and stuff, and then they literally have, doctors and scientists go and measure the bombing stuff as there's main bodies around the town and stuff like that. So they use it to test their weapons. Okay, back to causes what led to the war. So remember, the British are going to, and the French are finally going to put a stop to Hitler and his expansion stuff and him breaking the Versailles Treaty, which said he couldn't do it. But remember, rules are only good if they're enforced, and since no one's enforcing them, Germany's doing whatever they want. Okay, so Italy, France, Great Britain, and Germany finally meet at the Munich conference. They're meeting to decide the fate of Czechoslovakia. The weird thing is Czechoslovakia is not present, so they're going to be talking about them but not inviting them, which makes sense because they might say, hey, we don't want to be split up or taken over, okay? But they don't get to say that. The Allies then follow the policy of appeasement here. This is where it's reinforced or once again shown, here's what happens. They say, Hitler, you can keep what you got, but please don't take any more. Hitler promises to halt his expansion. He promises. Okay, his fingers are probably crossed behind his back. The British Prime Minister Chamberlain, who helps to coordinate this, flies back to England and then gets off the plane and he holds up the paper and he says, "We have peace in our time." Okay, supposedly Hitler leaves that same meeting and drives back in his car because he's not flying. Drives back in his car, and when his general goes, "Dude, why'd you sign that?" And he says, "That paper's not worth the paper." The contract's not worth the paper it's written on, and supposedly tears up the contract or his copy of the paper in the car. So he knew what he was doing. He's just buying himself some time to put himself in a situation so he could do his next step, okay, which is to set up the attack of Poland. But before that, he's concerned about being attacked by Russia. Russia's huge. They're semi-powerful. They're on the move. They're one of the up-and-comings during this Great Depression. They're the only ones that have jobs, okay? And Hitler's afraid that if he attacks Poland, Russia might think it's a threat against them, and they might attack Germany. So he signs a non-aggression pact. Okay, the problem is Hitler and Stalin hate each other, like hate beyond hate. Okay, if you put both of them in the room, one of them's going to die, and that one that dies first is going to come back from the dead and kill the other guy, so that they both don't leave the room. Okay, the deal is Russia doesn't have to worry about the Nazi attack. Germany doesn't have to fight for Russia, and they also decide to split Poland between themselves. Okay, that's the end. Okay, I'm going to go back one because I thought I was going to hurry. Okay, the last thing is this non-aggression pact shocks everyone else, and part of it is kept secret. They know that they met, and the question was always, why would these groups meet? Well, because Hitler's always planning his next attack. His next attack will be the attack of Poland, which, according to the Munich Pact, going back one more time, okay, England and France promised to protect Poland, okay, if Germany does attack them. So I should put that in the copy here, and now I will. Okay, so bear with me. Great Britain and France promise to defend Poland. So now that'll show Hitler, you better not do it. It's not going to stop him. We already know what happens.